If you just allowed a plant to grow willy-nilly, you would just have a plant anarchy within the room. The plant would be everywhere.
Yes.
And the plant needs to be clipped.
Right.
Would you agree with that analogy?
I would agree with that. Roses have to be pruned to make them look, like beautiful roses.
And this is an intelligent man, isn't it? You can tell he's a well-educated, intelligent man. So we got on talking eventually on the subject of the 1990 election and Aung San Suu Kyi, who won the election, and we got talking about why the Burmese military didn't hand over power and why they imprisoned her. And these were his thoughts on that subject.
The military government organized it. The military government never participated in that election. It was not the government against the opposition. It was between some political parties. And the election was held not for transfer of power. The government was trying to create a new constitution for the country, which must be overseen by an elected assembly. And this was the idea. And as soon as this party won the elections, they immediately demanded transfer of power to them, and which was denied, of course. So they went underground, and it is still propagated out here that the election that this party and these people won have not been been installed into power as a government. This was never intended to be for transfer of power.
But this is entirely natural for a new country to do. You wouldn't automatically just do something straight away if you're a new country. You would practice it.
Yes.
You would see how it worked. So if you are going to bring in an element of democracy, it would be important to have a trial run to see how it works. If, for example, you were, say, an athlete and you threw the javelin, you wouldn't just pick up a javelin and run with it and hurl with it.
No.
You'd practice first with some darts that were small. Would that be a fair analogy?
Yes, that would be a very fair analogy.
There's been lots of calls for economic sanctions on Burma, and quite a few countries have actually withdrawn from Burma and they've disinvested. PepsiCo has pulled out, Michael Jackson, add a word, don't like it. Levi pulled out, Ericsson, British Home Stores, yo, way to go. You know what I mean? Whoa, static on the blouse, but politically fucking sound. But there's a British company still in Burma, and this British company is called Premier Oil. They're a medium-sized oil company. They're involved in a pipeline that runs in the southeastern part of Burma, from Burma into Thailand. This is a heavily militarised zone. It's a zone where a lot of the human rights abuses are taking place. And it's this deal with Premier Oil is going to give the Burmese military regime about $120 million. So if you haven't followed the argument so far, it's they get the oil to get the money, they get the money to get the guns, they get the guns to give to the soldiers, they get the soldiers to make sure they protect the people. They protect the people so they don't ask for democracy. I don't know why. She swallowed a fly. Perhaps she'll die. Right. We wanted to ask a few questions to Premier Oil about their involvement in it. What we did was, obviously companies don't like coming out for us. They're reticent. And so what happened, we met this lovely Buddhist monk, and he handed in a letter to Premier Oil, and we kind of piggybacked along. And so when he handed in the letter, we turned up and said, oh, do you mind if we film it? And this guy who was in charge of their global social policy said, no, that's fine. I said, can we just ask you a few questions? He said, no. I said, well, come on, just a few. No. I said, can you just hold this? And gave him this great big fucking metal box. And so he's standing there holding this metal box. I've lifted the lid and we've got a video recorder inside. I said, we'll just have a look at this. And just press play, and he's standing there with this box. I'm going to show you the tapes that we played him. If you don't believe this report, the one thing that I'd ask you to think of is, if you think she's lying, ask yourself one question. What level of atrocity has to be occurring for her to think she can get away with the lie?
MTP, her husband, her son, her cousin, and some of the villagers were captured by the Burmese soldiers in the beginning of February '97, and they all tied up by the Burmese soldiers. Especially my friend MTP was tied up, and the Burmese soldiers gang raped her in front of her husband. And then in front of Nopopis and her husband, they cut off the baby's heart, and that they cut off the baby's heart with a knife, and then put the baby heart over the fire, and they gave it to Nopopis and her husband to eat, and swallowed the flesh or the heart of the babies, their own babies.
The other tape that we got was from Aung San Suu Kyi, a name you've heard tonight and probably heard a lot before. And this tape was smuggled out of Burma.
Investing in Burma at this time in any way is tantamount to encouraging the military regime, which is against a transition to democracy. Apart from the actual revenues that it brings to the government, it also constitutes a psychological boost because it makes the government feel that however repressive they may be, they still have the support of big companies, or at least one or two big companies.
Then we get on to saying hello to Premier. Watch the guy's face. Not a happy bunny, as he shouldn't be.
So Premier Oil, by coming into Burma at this time, does a great disservice to the cause for democracy.
So that was Aung San Suu Kyi, as you know, who is the democratically elected leader of Burma, asking you not to be in Burma.
Right. I recognise Aung San Suu Kyi, and the company's position's always been that that they're open to dialogue. In fact, our chief executive has been in dialogue with Aung San Suu Kyi and has made our position and the productive investment that we have in Myanmar quite clear.
Did she ask the chairman if Premier would leave?
It was the chief executive, and obviously I wasn't privy, I wasn't part of the meeting. So really, I would have to refer specific questions to Charles Jameson, our chief executive.
I appreciate that.
To answer that, but again. The Premier has been in dialogue with Aung San Suu Kyi.
Yeah, but she's asked you to leave, and I just wondered, what would it take for Premier to leave?
I think it's inappropriate for me to try and speculate on an answer
Cook has actually
at this point of time.
The Foreign Office called Premier in and asked you not to go in, not to be there, didn't he?
Again, I don't have that information. If I could just refer you to our chief executive,
but
who
said on the
possibly
Today
should
programme that you should
be privy to that information.
He said on the Today programme, he said, we called in Premier Oil and we said, look, don't do it. You've been asked by the Foreign Office, you've been asked by Aung San Suu Kyi, these people here have testified to the brutality of what's happening in that region. What does it take?
If I can just reiterate that, I am not the person who's privy to that information, so I couldn't agree or disagree with what you're saying, so it puts me in an awkward position.
After he did that, he started phoning us and having chats and explaining their policies. And he said something very interesting. He said, you said Robin Cook said that we shouldn't do it, that we shouldn't be in Burma. He said, well, I don't think that statement's entirely accurate. I said, oh, really? He said, yeah. I said, because that would obviously change the focus of the show if we had evidence of that. He said, we've got some letters I could give you.
And we have been encouraging companies to recognise the reality of Burma and the reality of trading with it. But we had actually that particular oil company to refer was summoned into the Foreign Office, and we had an exchange with the chairman of that company and explained to him the consequences of such investment. We actually had that company and said, don't do it.
So Cook said this on the Today programme, bunged the letter up, because on the same day, Premier Oil, the chief executive, wrote to Cook saying at no time did he say or in any way suggest, don't do it, pull out, or words to that effect. Ooh. That means that Cookie could be lying. Someone's lying here, aren't they? So who do I believe, a multinational oil company who worked with dictators or Robin Cook? Oh, fuck it, can't I toss for it? The thing is here, is Cook is saying he called them in and said, don't do it. They had the meeting in the Foreign Office and said, don't do it. And they're saying, no, we didn't. So he thought, fuck it, we've got to ask Robin Cook, who's right? And now the chances of Robin Cook giving us an interview are about 0, if I'm optimistic. But with a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of ingenuity, you can engineer a chance meeting.